the warrior with the sealed case. The royal arena of Velzareth was built to display power. Tall white crystal towers circled the open battlefield, and thousands of alien citizens filled the floating seats above. At the highest balcony stood Princess Erin Valeris, heir to the Azure Dominion. Her silver armor shimmered in the sunlight, and a long blue cape flowed behind her like a wave of energy. She was young, proud, and certain of her empire's superiority. Now, today's event was meant to entertain the court. A captured human warrior was being brought into the arena. Massive gates opened slowly with a deep metallic sound. 2 armored guards escorted the human forward, though they did not hold him tightly. He walked on his own. His armor was scratched and damaged from previous battles, dark metal marked with burn lines and small dents. He wore no glowing shield. No advanced alien weapon hung from his side. The crowd began whispering. "That is the human champion?" He looked smaller than I expected. Humans always rely on machines. Princess Erin leaned slightly forward from her balcony, studying him carefully. Reports described him as dangerous. A survivor of 3 border conflicts, a soldier who had escaped impossible situations. He did not look impressive. He stopped in the center of the arena and removed his helmet calmly. His face was steady. No fear, no anger, just quiet observation. The princess spoke, and her voice amplified across the arena. "So this is the famous human warrior who survived the Skorath siege." The crowd reacted with light laughter. The human did not answer. She tilted her head slightly. "You are smaller than the stories described." Still, no reaction. Erin allowed a faint smile. "Perhaps humans exaggerate their heroes." More laughter echoed from the stands. The princess signaled to her lead commander. "Scan him!" A glowing beam passed over the human's body. The energy readings appeared on a floating display beside the balcony. "Minimal active weapons," the commander reported. "No energy blade, no plasma core. Armor integrity low." The princess looked satisfied. So the rumors were incorrect. But then the commander paused. "There is one object," he said slowly. The display zoomed in on the human's back. Attached firmly to his armor was a sealed metallic case. It was small, rectangular, and dark. No energy signature came from it. No recognizable alien material either. "What is that?" Erin asked sharply. The human finally spoke. "It belongs to me." His voice was calm and steady. The princess narrowed her eyes. "We are aware of that. What is inside?" He did not hesitate. "Hope." The arena erupted in loud laughter. Some nobles clapped sarcastically. Princess Erin smiled confidently. "Hope?" she repeated. "Is that the new human weapon?" The human looked up at her balcony without fear. "But it depends on how you define weapon." The tone of his voice did not change. It was not aggressive. It was not defensive. It was simply firm. The princess studied him more carefully now. Most prisoners begged or threatened. This one did neither. "You stand in the heart of my empire," she said clearly. "Your fleet defeated, your allies scattered, and you carry hope?" "Yes," he answered. The single word echoed strangely across the open arena. Erin folded her hands behind her back. "You understand that if that case contains explosive material, you will be destroyed before you can activate it." "I understand," he replied. "Then open it," she ordered. The commander hesitated. "Your Highness, we should isolate the object first." The princess raised a hand. "No, I want to see what humans believe is powerful." The guard stepped forward cautiously. One of them unclipped the sealed case from the human's back. "Be careful," the human said quietly. And the commander smirked slightly. "Threat detected?" "No," the human replied. "Curiosity can be dangerous." The case was placed on a floating platform in the center of the arena. energy shields activated around it, thin and transparent. Princess Erin leaned forward slightly, her confidence still visible, but curiosity growing stronger. "Open it," she commanded. The lid began to unlock with a soft metallic click. The arena grew quiet. No one laughed now. The human stood completely still, and watching not the case but the princess. She felt it, his calmness. It was not the calmness of surrender, it was the calmness of preparation. The lid slowly lifted halfway. A faint blue light reflected from inside. The princess felt a small pulse of unease in her chest. She had expected a simple device, a hidden weapon, something dramatic. Instead, the energy reading remained strange, not explosive, not military. The human finally spoke again, his voice clear and steady. "You believe war is decided by strength." The lid opened fully. The princess stepped closer to the balcony edge, her eyes widening slightly as she saw what lay inside. For the first time since the human entered her arena, the crowd made no sound. And for the first time that day, Princess Erin felt something she did not expect. Uncertainty. What he really carried. The arena remained silent as the lid of the sealed case opened completely. Princess Erin leaned forward, expecting some hidden explosive, advanced alien weapon, or unknown human technology. Instead, she saw something that did not look dangerous at all. Inside the case were several compact metallic devices, each shaped like a small triangular node. Beneath them was a thin, transparent display sheet glowing with faint blue light. It was not a bomb. It was not a blade. It was information. Her commander activated a secondary scan. "Energy signature is low," he reported. "Communication hardware. Data storage. Navigation mapping systems." The princess frowned slightly. "That is not a weapon." The human warrior looked up calmly. "No, it is not." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why bring it into my capital during war?" The human answered without hesitation. "Because you believe war is decided by force." The faint blue display sheet inside the case suddenly projected upward, forming a three-dimensional star map above the floating platform. Gasps spread across the arena, and the projection did not show human territory. It showed the Azure Dominion itself. Trade routes glowed in steady lines. Border patrol patterns appeared in shifting loops. Resource hubs and supply corridors pulsed softly in calculated rhythm. The princess felt a sudden tightness in her chest. "How did you obtain this data?" she demanded. The human did not smile. "By watching." Her commander stepped closer to the projection. "These are accurate," he whispered. Every major supply chain is marked, even secondary reserve routes." The princess's voice hardened. "Explain." The human stood tall in the center of the arena, his damaged armor reflecting the blue map light. "Humans do not fight blindly," he said. "When your fleets expanded into outer systems, we studied you. When your trade ships moved through neutral space, we mapped patterns. When your patrols adjusted during conflict, we recorded the change." The projection zoomed in automatically, highlighting weak transition points between sectors. Several nobles exchanged uneasy looks. "You mapped our empire," Erin said slowly. "Yes." "For what purpose?" she pressed. "For understanding," he replied. The word unsettled her more than a threat would have. The star map shifted again, showing simulation overlays. Red lines appeared where trade disruptions would cause resource delay. The yellow markers indicated political tension zones, where local governors already struggled with stability. None of this information was secret to the Empire's leadership, but seeing it displayed publicly by an enemy felt different. "You believe this frightens us?" Erin asked sharply. The human shook his head. "No." "Then what is the point of this display?" she demanded. "The point," he said calmly, "is that we carry knowledge, not just weapons." The arena grew quiet again. and the princess forced confidence into her voice. Every empire studies its rivals. That is not shocking. The human nodded. Correct. Then why bring it here? She repeated. Because if I do not return safely, he said evenly, this data transmits automatically. The sentence settled heavily in the air. Her commander quickly scanned the case again. Signal routing systems detected, he confirmed quietly. Quantum burst capable. Aaron's gaze locked onto the human. Yes, you threaten us. I prepare for outcomes, he replied. The difference in wording frustrated her. You stand alone in our arena, she said. You have no fleet above our skies, and yet you believe this gives you leverage? It gives clarity, he answered. The princess stepped away from the balcony and descended toward the lower platform. Her presence in the arena caused the crowd to remain perfectly silent. She approached the floating star map and studied the highlighted weaknesses. These routes, she said slowly, pointing at one glowing supply corridor, are heavily defended. Yes, the human agreed, which is why alternative routes are thinner. Her commander looked at her cautiously. The human was not exaggerating. The map showed patterns the Empire had assumed were unnoticed. You said earlier you carried hope, she said quietly. Is this hope? Yes. She looked at him sharply. Explain. Hope, the human said calmly, is the belief that conflict can be avoided if both sides understand the cost. The arena remained silent. You came here with intelligence on our vulnerabilities, she said, and instead of attacking, you presented it. Yes. Why? She demanded. Because destruction wastes resources, he answered, and humans prefer survival. Aaron studied his face closely now. There was no arrogance there, no visible fear either, just steady calculation. You could have used this data to damage us, she said. Yes. But you did not. No. The princess realized something unsettling. The human had not entered her capital to threaten immediate war. He had entered with leverage, but used it to start dialogue. She glanced at her advisors. None of them laughed anymore. None of them dismissed him as weak. The human warrior stood in damaged armor without a visible weapon, yet he had shifted the balance of power inside the arena. You believe showing us our weaknesses will make us respect you? Aaron asked carefully. No, he said quietly. I believe hiding them from you would be dangerous. The honesty struck deeper than expected. She looked back at the star map floating between them. It was not glowing with destruction plans. It was glowing with analysis. For the first time, Princess Aaron understood that the human had not carried a weapon into her capital. He had carried awareness, and awareness, she realized slowly, could be far more dangerous than firepower. The realization behind the map. The blue star map continued to glow between the human warrior and Princess Aaron, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor of the arena. The crowd above watched in complete silence now. What had started as entertainment had become something else entirely. This was no longer about a captured enemy soldier. It was about perspective. The Princess Aaron walked slowly around the floating projection, studying every marked trade line and highlighted supply corridor. She recognized them all. They were real, painfully real. The human had not exaggerated anything. He had not invented weaknesses. He had simply exposed what already existed. You spent years studying us, she said carefully. Yes, the human replied. While we were focused on expansion. Yes. Her jaw tightened slightly. Oh, you were preparing. We were learning, he corrected. The correction was subtle but powerful. Aaron turned toward her senior commander. How accurate is this data? The commander hesitated only a moment. Extremely accurate, Your Highness. Even minor route adjustments are marked. A faint wave of discomfort passed through the nobles watching from above. If humans possessed this level of insight, Then they had been watching quietly for a long time. The princess stepped closer to the human. Why bring this to me directly? Because information changes decisions, he answered calmly. You assume I will change mine? She replied. No, he said evenly. I assume you prefer stability over unnecessary risk. The word stability echoed in her thoughts. The human continued, his voice measured and controlled. Empires fall for two reasons: external attack or internal weakness. External attack we can see. Internal weakness is harder. Aaron felt a spark of irritation. You imply we are weak. I imply all systems are, he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not show aggression. He simply stated a truth that applied universally. The star map shifted again, this time displaying simulation models. One model showed what would happen if a key supply corridor failed for just 2 cycles. Several outer colonies would experience shortages. Another model showed political tension rising in border sectors if resource distribution slowed. These are predictions, she said. Yes, he replied, based on your calculations. Yes. And what do your calculations predict about humanity? She asked sharply. The human met her gaze directly. The same risks. That answer surprised her. You mapped your own weaknesses as well? She asked. Yes. For what purpose? To fix them. The arena remained still. My Aaron realized something uncomfortable. Her empire often assumed superiority meant security. Humans assumed vulnerability meant preparation. You expect failure? She said slowly. Yes. You prepare for collapse? Yes. And you believe we do not? The human did not answer immediately this time. I believe long periods of dominance reduce urgency. Her commanders stiffened slightly at the implication. Aaron studied him closely. There was no disrespect in his tone, only analysis. You could have attacked us without warning, she said. With this data, you could have caused chaos. Yes, he admitted calmly. Why did you not? Because chaos harms everyone. The simplicity of the answer made it harder to dismiss. One of the nobles above spoke quietly to another. He is not threatening war. He is preventing it. The princess heard it. She walked toward the sealed case again. Beneath the projection device were additional data modules stacked neatly. Well, what else is inside? She asked. Peace proposal routes, he replied. She looked up sharply. Explain. Trade adjustment models, he said. Joint patrol recommendations. Border sector stabilization plans. Her commander activated one of the additional files. A secondary projection appeared beside the first map. This one showed cooperative security zones rather than weaknesses. You planned alternatives, she said slowly. Yes. You prepared for war. Yes. But you also prepared for cooperation. Yes. The pattern was becoming clear. The human warrior had carried more than intelligence. He had carried options. You wanted to shock me, Aaron said. No, he answered. I wanted you to see. The difference mattered. Above them, the crowd shifted slightly. The earlier confidence in their princess had not vanished, but it had evolved into something more serious. Why, you entered my capital knowing you could be executed, she said. Yes. You brought data that would auto-transmit if you died. Yes. And you still stand calmly. Yes. Why? She asked finally, her voice lower now. Because fear does not improve outcomes, he said quietly. Understanding does. The statement lingered heavily. Aaron looked around the arena. Her people expected strength from her. They expected decisive action. But decisive action did not always mean destruction. You believe this knowledge gives you power over us, she said. No, he replied. It gives us equal footing. The concept was uncomfortable. The Azure Dominion did not consider many species equals. The princess stared at the floating maps one last time. She realized something that unsettled her deeply. The human had walked into her arena without firing a single shot, and yet he had forced her to confront realities her own advisors had grown comfortable ignoring. She looked back at him. You carried hope, she said slowly. Yes. Not hope for victory. No. Hope for balance. Yes. For the first time since the human entered her arena, Princess Erin felt something shift inside her leadership instincts. This was not weakness. This was strategic patience. The human had not come with explosives. He had come with awareness. And awareness, she now understood, could reshape empires without a single blast being fired. The decision that defined power. The arena no longer felt like a place of spectacle. It felt like a chamber of consequence. The floating maps continued to rotate slowly above the sealed case, casting shifting blue light across Princess Erin's armor. Every highlighted trade corridor and every marked vulnerability reminded her that power was not just measured by fleets and weapons. It was measured by how well a system understood itself. Her senior commanders stood in uneasy silence behind her, and none of them were laughing now. None of them dismissed the human as weak. They had seen the data. They had recognized its precision. Princess Erin turned slowly toward the human warrior. If this information is transmitted, she said carefully, other rival empires could exploit it. Yes, he replied calmly. And you are willing to risk destabilizing the entire region? I am willing to risk escalation only if diplomacy fails, he answered. His words were steady, not threatening. You prepared for both outcomes, she observed. Yes. You planned for your own death. Yes. The arena seemed to tighten around that statement. Erin studied him closely. Why risk yourself personally? Because some messages require presence, he said. There was something different in his tone now. Not emotion, but sincerity. The princess walked in a slow circle around him, analyzing not his armor, but his posture. There was no tension in his shoulders, so no desperation in his breathing. You believe we would listen simply because you are calm? She asked. No, he replied. I believe you will listen because you are intelligent. The sentence was not flattery, it was expectation. Her commanders shifted slightly. The human was not insulting her. He was placing responsibility on her judgment. Your empire values strength, he continued. So does humanity. We simply define it differently. And how do you define it? She asked. Control, he answered. Control of reaction, control of escalation, control of timing. The words resonated deeply within the arena. Princess Erin realized something critical. If she reacted with anger now, if she ordered his execution or seized the data violently, she would prove his point about reaction. She would confirm the Empire's reliance on dominance over discipline. She glanced up toward the stands. Thousands of eyes watched her. They expected decisive authority, and the human had shifted the battlefield from physical terrain to strategic mindset. If I release you, she said slowly, you leave with our weaknesses. Yes. If I detain you, your data transmits. Yes. If I execute you, the data still transmits. Yes. Her voice lowered slightly. You created a scenario where violence provides no advantage. Yes. The answer carried no pride, only calculation. One of her advisors stepped forward cautiously. Your Highness, we can attempt signal disruption. The human turned his head slightly toward the advisor. You can try. The confidence in that statement was not arrogance. It was preparation. Princess Erin understood now. The sealed case was not the true weapon. The true weapon was foresight. The human had engineered a situation where brute force solved nothing. You forced balance, she said quietly. No, he corrected. I offered it. The distinction was sharp, and the princess walked toward the floating projection once more. She touched a highlighted trade route gently, watching it pulse under her fingers. "You mapped our vulnerabilities," she said. "Yes?" "But you also mapped solutions." "Yes." "Joint patrol zones," she continued, studying the cooperative overlay. "Shared monitoring stations, trade redundancy networks." "Yes." She looked back at him. "You prepared for peace, as carefully as war." "Yes." The arena remained completely silent, as if even the air understood the weight of her next decision. Aaron inhaled slowly. "If we agree to structured cooperation," she said, "you will share full analytical methodology." "Yes." "And humanity will not exploit these weaknesses." "We do not exploit instability that harms ourselves," he replied. The logic was clear. Both powers shared space. Collapse in one sector would ripple outward. The princess stepped back and raised her voice for all to hear. "But the human warrior entered our capital carrying knowledge," she declared. "He revealed not a bomb, but understanding." The crowd listened closely. "Strength without awareness is fragile," she continued. "Awareness without discipline is dangerous." She looked directly at the human. "We choose discipline." A ripple moved through the arena, not applause, but recognition. The tension shifted from confrontation to negotiation. "You will be released under escort," she said, "and discussions will begin immediately." The human gave a small nod. "That is acceptable." Her commander looked surprised, but did not object. As guards carefully closed the sealed case again, Princess Erin felt a strange sense of clarity. She had expected to display dominance today. Instead, she had displayed restraint. The human warrior had carried no blade, no explosive device. He had carried perspective, and she had chosen to accept it rather than destroy it. As the arena gates slowly opened for his departure, Aaron spoke one final sentence quietly enough that only he could hear. "You shocked me." He met her gaze evenly. "That was never the goal," he replied. She watched him walk away without chains, without humiliation, and without fear. In that moment, Princess Erin understood something that few rulers learned early in their reign. True power was not proven by crushing a threat. It was proven by recognizing when that threat was actually an opportunity. The weapon they never expected. The arena slowly emptied, but the impact of that moment did not fade. Princess Erin returned to the upper council chamber overlooking the capital city. The massive windows reflected distant starships moving through the sky lanes, their steady paths a reminder of how fragile stability truly was. And her advisors gathered around a circular projection table where the humans' data files were already being reviewed in detail. What had begun as a public display of superiority had turned into a quiet examination of imperial structure. One senior strategist activated a deeper layer of the human's projections. "The analysis is disturbingly precise," he admitted. "He identified resource strain zones before our own quarterly reports did." Another advisor added, "Though their predictive models account for social unrest if supply chains weaken. That level of foresight suggests long-term observation." Princess Erin listened carefully. She did not interrupt. She had been trained to lead with authority, but today she chose to lead with patience. The human warrior's greatest strength had not been his data. It had been his timing. He revealed knowledge only after ensuring it would be received seriously. "Review the cooperative models," she instructed, and the projection shifted to the second layer of the human's proposal. Joint security outposts along shared borders, data-sharing protocols to detect early piracy or rebellion, trade diversification pathways designed to prevent single-route collapse. These were not demands for dominance, they were frameworks for resilience. "He prepared for our refusal," one advisor said. "Yes," Aaron replied calmly, but he also prepared for our acceptance. That distinction lingered in the room. Across the capital, news of the arena encounter spread rapidly. Citizens who had expected spectacle now debated strategy. Younger officers within the fleet spoke quietly about the humans' composure. Veterans of previous wars recognized something familiar: survival through discipline rather than pride. Meanwhile, the human warrior was escorted to a secure diplomatic chamber rather than a prison block. Guards maintained respectful distance. He did not attempt escape. He did not appear concerned. He waited. Princess Erin entered the chamber later that cycle alone. "You anticipated this meeting," she said without preamble. "Yes," he replied calmly. "You anticipated our hesitation." "Yes." "You anticipated our internal review." "Yes." She studied him carefully. "You assume we will cooperate." "I assume you prefer strength that lasts," he answered. The confidence in his voice was not personal arrogance. It was based on pattern recognition. "You carried hope," she said again, recalling his first statement in the arena. "I expected a hidden weapon. Instead, you carried options." He nodded slightly. "Options are safer than ultimatums." She walked slowly around the chamber. "You realize this changes our power dynamic?" "Yes." "Some of my advisors will see cooperation as weakness." "Yes." "And your own leadership?" "They will measure outcome, not ego," he replied. The answer held quiet weight. Princess Erin stopped in front of him. "Why not exploit us?" "Because destabilized neighbors create unstable borders," he said simply. She recognized the strategic logic immediately. Chaos would not remain contained. It would ripple outward, damaging both powers. "You believe long-term stability creates more power than conquest," she observed. "Yes." There it was again, that single word, certainty. Erin felt something shift inside her understanding of strength. Now she had grown up believing power was proven through expansion. The human demonstrated that power could also be proven through endurance. She activated a small projection between them, highlighting several proposed joint zones from his map. "These corridors," she said, "would require transparency between our fleets." "Yes." "That level of trust is rare." "Trust built on verified data is less fragile," he replied. She looked at him for a long moment. You planned for our pride." "Yes." "And you accounted for it." "Yes." The simplicity of his responses masked the complexity behind them. He had not just studied her empire's supply routes, he had studied its psychology. Outside the chamber, senior advisors awaited her decision. They expected caution, some expected retaliation, a few feared humiliation. Erin returned to the council chamber and addressed them firmly. "The human did not threaten destruction," she said. He presented consequence." Silence followed. "His data exposes vulnerabilities we already knew existed," she continued. "Ignoring them because they were revealed by an enemy would be irrational." One commander spoke carefully. "Your Highness, cooperation risks revealing our defensive doctrine." "And isolation risks stagnation," she replied immediately. The debate quieted. She placed her hands on the projection table. "Strength that refuses to evolve eventually fractures." The words echoed softly in the chamber. "We will test limited cooperation in the outer border sectors," she concluded. "Data exchange under controlled parameters, joint patrol observation." It was not surrender, it was strategy. Far across the galaxy, human command received notice that initial cooperation had been accepted. Commander Hayes' superiors reviewed the outcome with interest, but without surprise. She chose endurance," one analyst observed. Back in the capital, Princess Erin stood once more at the balcony overlooking the city. The sky lanes shimmered with controlled traffic. Trade ships moved smoothly across stable routes. She understood something clearly now. The human warrior had not carried explosives. He had carried foresight. And foresight, she realized, could reshape the balance of power without firing a single shot. What shocked her most was not the data. It was the realization that true strength sometimes arrives quietly, disguised as a choice. The power of controlled trust. The first joint patrol launched quietly. There was no celebration, no public announcement across the Dominion. It began as a border stability exercise, a phrase chosen carefully to avoid political friction. A single Imperial cruiser and a human frigate entered the outer corridor of Sector 9, an area known for occasional pirate activity and trade route strain. And the mission was simple on paper: observe, exchange limited data, and monitor transit flow. But in reality, it was a test of something far more fragile than defense grids. It was a test of controlled trust. Princess Erin watched the live strategic feed from her command chamber. She stood alone, hands behind her back, studying the synchronized movements of ships that had once been potential enemies. The human vessel maintained formation distance precisely, neither too close nor too distant. They mirrored Imperial patrol timing almost exactly, as if they had studied it long before the official exchange. Her senior fleet commander entered quietly. "No hostile activity detected," he reported. "Human tactical feed is accurate. Their sensor data confirmed 2 minor anomalies we had not yet tracked." Erin did not show surprise. She had expected that. Hours later, a small pirate raiding craft attempted to intercept a merchant convoy along the corridor. Or it was a minor threat, nothing requiring fleet-level engagement. But it presented an opportunity to observe cooperation under pressure. Imperial gunners prepared to fire, but before authorization was completed, the human frigate adjusted course subtly. It did not attack first. Instead, it transmitted predictive trajectory data directly to the Imperial cruiser, calculating the pirate vessel's evasive maneuvers before they occurred. The result was efficient and clean. And the pirate craft was disabled with minimal damage and no civilian loss. The human frigate never attempted to claim control of the engagement. Princess Erin studied the after-action report carefully. The human crew had not acted to display superiority. They had acted to improve outcome. That difference mattered. In the following cycles, additional joint patrols were deployed in controlled sectors. Trade corridors stabilized faster than predicted. Border settlements reported reduced tension. Smaller Allied systems expressed cautious optimism at the visible cooperation between 2 dominant powers. Within the Dominion's military academies, instructors began incorporating comparative doctrine studies between Imperial expansion models and human resilience models. Cadets debated the efficiency of layered defense strategies versus overwhelming force. The conversation shifted gradually from pride to preparedness. Meanwhile, the human warrior who had initiated the encounter, Commander Hayes, remained stationed aboard his vessel. He did not request public recognition. He did not seek diplomatic praise. His task had never been fame. It had been recalibration. One evening, Princess Erin requested a secure transmission channel with him. "You anticipated this stage," she began without formal greeting. "Yes," he answered calmly through the holographic projection. You calculated that joint patrol success would reinforce cooperation." "Yes." "And if the patrol had failed?" she asked. "We would have adjusted," he replied. She studied his face for a moment. "You always prepare for collapse." "Yes. And that gives you confidence." "It gives us options," he corrected. The word options remained central to his philosophy. "You understand," she continued, "just that our people view cooperation as risk. Risk managed through structure is safer than conflict unmanaged," he responded. The clarity of his logic was difficult to challenge. Princess Erin looked out across her skyline before speaking again. "Your case contained more than maps," she said slowly. "It contained expectation." "Yes." You expected us to think. Yes. A faint smile touched her expression. That is a dangerous assumption. Yes, he agreed quietly. She found the answer almost humorous. Across the outer territories, the positive impact of cooperation became measurable. Trade growth stabilized inflation in vulnerable colonies. Shared intelligence reduced insurgent activity. Both powers benefited without dramatic confrontation. In private council meetings, some of Aaron's more traditional advisors still questioned the approach. Dominance ensures obedience, one insisted. Short-term obedience, she corrected. Long-term stability requires resilience. She now spoke the language she once resisted. The human warrior's greatest shock had not been the data in his case. It had been the demonstration that strength could exist without display. That awareness had forced her to confront her own leadership instincts. As months passed, tension between the Dominion and humanity shifted into guarded respect. Neither side fully trusted the other yet, but both understood that reckless escalation would now require ignoring evidence of mutual benefit. Standing at her balcony once more, Princess Erin reflected on the first moment she saw the sealed case opened in the arena. She had expected a hidden weapon. She had expected fear. Instead, she had discovered preparation. And preparation, she now understood, could be more powerful than fire. The human warrior had carried hope. But it was not blind hope. It was structured, calculated, a disciplined hope. And in choosing to respond with equal discipline, she had strengthened her empire more than any public victory ever could. The shock that became respect. Years later, historians of the Azure Dominion would record the day the human warrior entered the royal arena as a turning point in imperial policy. At the time, it had seemed like a simple political display. A captured enemy brought before the princess, a chance to demonstrate dominance. Instead, it had reshaped the future of two civilizations. Princess Erin no longer stood on balconies seeking to impress crowds with sharp words. She stood in war chambers reviewing predictive models, economic projections, and cross-species treaties built on structured cooperation. The early joint patrols had expanded into formalized stability corridors. Trade between the Dominion and human territories had increased steadily. Piracy along shared borders dropped to record lows. More importantly, neither side had needed to test their full military strength against the other. That outcome had not come from fear. It had come from understanding. In the central archives of the Dominion, the sealed case and its data modules were preserved digitally as part of diplomatic study material. Cadets were taught how the human warrior had engineered a scenario where violence offered no advantage. They studied how he had anticipated every reaction, execution, imprisonment, refusal, and accounted for it in advance. His true weapon had not been technology, it had been foresight. Commander Hayes eventually returned to human space after years of continued service. He never sought public recognition for the arena incident. Within human command, the mission was categorized as a strategic stabilization success. To him, it was simply another example of preparation preventing unnecessary conflict. When Princess Erin later assumed full imperial authority after her mother's reign concluded, she carried that lesson forward. In her first address as sovereign ruler, she spoke clearly to her assembled fleets and advisors. "Power without awareness invites collapse," she said firmly. "We will not be an empire that confuses dominance with stability." The hall listened carefully. They had seen what blind expansion could cost. They had witnessed how calculated cooperation preserved resources. And years after their first encounter, Erin invited Commander Hayes to attend a formal summit, marking a decade of border stability. The setting was no longer an arena of spectacle. It was a diplomatic hall built jointly between human and Dominion engineers. No raised balconies, no dramatic gates, just equal seating arranged in a circular chamber. When Hayes entered, he wore standard uniform, clean but unadorned. The princess, now empress, met him at equal ground. "You shocked me that day," she said quietly, as they walked together before the summit began. "That was never my goal," he replied calmly. "I expected fire," she continued. "I expected defiance or fear." "And instead," he asked, "you showed calculation." Hayes nodded slightly. "Preparation reduces surprise." Aaron allowed a faint smile. "You turned my arena into a classroom." "That was your decision," he answered. "You chose to learn." The statement held no flattery. It was fact. During the summit, both leaders reaffirmed cooperative defense agreements and expanded shared predictive modeling systems. Smaller allied systems benefited from increased security and trade consistency. The region of space once marked by tension became known for stability. In private moments after the ceremony, Aaron reflected on how close she had been to ordering execution in that first meeting. Pride could have driven her to react impulsively. Had she done so, how the data would have transmitted, rival empires might have exploited vulnerabilities, and conflict could have escalated rapidly. Instead, she had paused. That pause had preserved strength. Commander Hayes eventually retired from frontline duty, but his legacy within both civilizations endured quietly, not as a conqueror, not as a hero of war, but as a strategist who carried awareness into hostile territory and transformed confrontation into recalibration. In academies across the Dominion, ICE instructors summarized the lesson in simple terms for young cadets. The human did not carry a weapon, they would say. He carried options. And that single distinction shaped how future leaders approached power. The alien princess had been shocked when she saw what the human warrior carried. She expected destruction. Instead, she found discipline. She expected arrogance. Instead, she found foresight. She expected weakness. Instead, and she discovered strength that did not need to announce itself. In the end, the greatest shock was not the data inside the sealed case. It was the realization that true power often arrives quietly, carrying nothing but understanding and the patience to use it wisely.